And the next spot here, the edge, again, some of this, sometimes I think these guys, there could be some overlap. There might be a time where an edge guy, a big edge guy, could line up as a D end in a certain set or two. We saw that last year at times with a guy like O'Shawn or a guy like Garrett Nelson would have hand in the turf and down, but sometimes they'd be stand up as well. As we look at the edge roster here, we have MJ Sherman, a junior, 6'3", 250. He's a transfer from Georgia, one of the three that we've had. Chief Borders, a sophomore, 6'4", 240, transfer from Florida. Jamari Butler, sophomore, 6'5", 245, and he had went into the transfer portal, and he's one of the guys that took his name back out, and I'm glad he did. We could use the depth from him. I think he's been developed in the last couple of years. He's starting to get ready. I mean, you saw him last year a few times on the field that he was there was a sparkle with him, and let's see what he can do here now going into year 3. Blaise Gunnerson, another big guy, 6'6", 250. So just looking at those top 4 guys there, everyone's between 240 and 250. They're all 6'3" to 6'6". There's some size there. Kai Wallin is a sophomore, 6'5", 235, and he's a junior college player that's come in here. Jake Appleget, redshirt freshman, 6'4", 220. And then the 2 true freshmen, Maverick Noonan, freshman, 6'3", 245. And Princewill, Umanmielen, freshman, 6'4", 230. A lot of upside with a lot of these guys. But, we'll start at the top there. Those are the guys that are really the ones that you're going to be expecting to play the biggest roles, those top 4. And we'll kind of see where that goes. Dave?
Yeah, wow. I mean, a bunch of names that didn't play that much or weren't on the roster last year, right? I mean,
yep.
with O'Shawn and et cetera, not here Nelson. So, I mean, Jamari Butler is the one name that sticks out. Yeah. Of someone who was really showing last year. And you're right. We're glad that he took his name out of that transfer portal. Blaise Gunnerson's been a name that, highly recruited. Everybody was excited that we got him out of Iowa and hasn't really shown much. But, I mean, he did start to play a little bit more last year as well, so he could make a big jump. I think this is where I would look at, even whether it's someone like Butler or Gunnerson or some of these transfers who they brought in specifically but didn't play that much, like Chief Borders, for example, and saying, like, are they going to make a big jump because of the change in coaching philosophy and approach, all those type of things, right? You're looking for at least 1 or 2 of these guys to make a big jump because there's not a lot of folks here that have had a lot of on-field production.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to say the same thing. I don't mean to be a broken record here, but, we brought in O'Shawn last year, and O'Shawn was the top transfer of the transfer portal, but we got him in here in June. And so I don't know that we have a really good example yet defensively the last couple of years of the portal of somebody that came in and right away really took over, as opposed to last week when we talked about wide receivers. The last couple of years between Samori Toure and Trey Palmer, we had guys that came in and they significant play time and they were your leading receivers that next season. But they also were here right now. They went through spring and they went through all the offseason parts. So, when we talk about guys in the past, one difference, I don't know if MJ Sherman or Chief Borders, is as talented or has the same skill set as what O'Shawn did coming in, but I know that they're going to be here now and we get to see that. And we've heard Coach Rule talk multiple times about the importance of practice. It's the most important thing to him. And that's part of the development. I don't know how you can get better and get developed if you're not there at practice. And that's what all these guys that we're talking about, these transfers, they're all here right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And Boomer, I think Chief Borders will make a lot of the best names lists.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. That's an easy one. Yeah.
I mean,
man, that's another young room. I know we've talked about this in some of the other, roster slots like we talked about last week too, but man, you've got 1 junior, no seniors, a whole bunch of sophomores and freshmen. So be interesting. So plenty of everyone able to step up. So yeah.
One advantage that they do have, again, with Borders and Sherman both being on campus right now too, they just went through that whole 8-week program that, weightlifting and training and everything leading up to spring, is that, this is a whole new staff. This is a whole new system. And these guys are going to be learning this together. So hopefully during this spring point, there's not going to be a bunch of guys that are feeling like they're left out, if that makes sense, like to where where like they're not going to be wondering where they are to fit in the system. They're actually going to be challenging each other to fit in the system. So maybe pushing themselves a little bit harder because there's nobody is guaranteed a spot at this point. Right. So everybody's like still battling.
There's no establishment.
Yeah. So there's no real pecking order at this point. So these guys maybe will work a little bit harder knowing that like they have a chance to play if they can step up and do it. I mean, I'm looking for positives here, you know.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to work harder, but to your point, Rob, there's clearly opportunity, right? There's playing time on the table, and someone's going to take it.
Yeah, well,
someone has to.
Fedoni said that last week at the presser, where he's like, there are certain guys that, you know, feel like they have an opportunity now that they didn't feel before because maybe they were on the bad side of a coach or just felt like they had fallen down the depth chart and that was it for them. They were done. And now you have new sets of eyes on you, and it's a new opportunity. And this happens. That's one of the benefits of a coaching change is it's an opportunity for guys that are to impress a new set of coaches. And so let's watch the video here. Speaking of coaches, let's watch the video of Rule talking about his new defensive coordinator and that staff that he's put together.
I think it shows a real strength of Tony that he would take a job as the coordinator and have the other three coaches all be not tied to him, but tied to me previously. But he's confident in who he is and in who his system is, and brought in some great analysts. You know, Coach McGarry's been doing this a long time. He brought in two guys, Josh Bringwell and Jack Potenza. I did not know them. I mean, the greatest compliment I can give both of them is if Tony left or I would hire them again. They're fantastic, and so. But it's been fun. I think it's going to be unique. And again, the most important thing to me is that they're watching the players and how they do things, right? Like, you know, are we a 4-3? Are we a 3-4? Are we a man team? Are we a zone team? His system has the flexibility to get to all that, but I need to see we have a lot of defensive backs. You know, I got to see what guys can do this spring and then really figure out, hey, this is the system that'll give our guys the best chance.
You know, he says there, are we a 4-3 or a 3-4 team and everything? I keep throwing that out, that 4-3 piece of this, because that might be how your numbers work out. If we go to a 4-3, we have more defensive linemen than if we're in a 3-4, in the sense that these edge players almost instantly turn into, at least a couple of them turn into defensive ends. I mean, that's just what happens in a 4-3. And so, you know, it wouldn't be unheard of to see Blaise Gunnerson on the opposite side of Jamari Butler at D ends with two defensive tackles in the middle. And if that's the case, now that you go back and you look at the D line, if you're just trying to fill two spots of depth here in a 4-3, this looks a lot different all of a sudden. Now you could see where maybe you have two or three deep, and that gives you a little more hope there. If you're going straight 3-4 or 3-3 and you need three guys from that first slide on it, now you feel a little different about the depth. So and these position groups, they all kind of merge into each other a little bit. This front seven, the edge guys, some of these guys could be on the next slide with the linebackers, because there's talk of that. Like, how does Sherman or Borders, would one of them move into an inside linebacker spot? And one of the things I think is interesting, I'm going to have to reach back out to Brett Ciancia with Pick Six, is that when he's creating the book, if you remember last year, I brought that up to him about the 3-4 and the 4-3, and really it's just about the front seven. And he said he was going to look into switching the way he did his defense, that he might just call it front seven, or, the front seven, instead of trying to break it down into D line and linebackers, because there's so much overlap anymore with the way that teams do this. And guys are one play, their hands in the turf, the next one's up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a really good point there. And they definitely were high on some of these transfers, like Chief Borders and MJ Sherman. So, and clearly have the pedigree in the recruiting to show they should be able to play at the Power 5 level. So should be interesting.